In this video, I'm going to show you how to install some SiteAudit viewers in your environment to give additional users access to the SiteAudit database, but also restrict their access such that they cannot change any configuration information, start and stop monitoring, or do anything to corrupt your database. Essentially, they'll be given access to view the data and run reports. Okay, so that's what we'll be looking at today. And the things that we'll do, we're going to install the SiteAudit Viewer to provide multiple users access to the SiteAudit data, restrict access, as I mentioned, to prevent any undesired changes, but still allow users to view the data and run reports. So currently the way this works is you have a site audit administrator, the person who's installed and is responsible for configuring the discovery, starting and stopping the monitoring service, and all of this. And they have full access to the site audit database where they can create databases, they can create users, they can assign those users to roles to restrict their access. They can run reports, do queries, troubleshooting, all types of things like that. And there's various roles in SiteAudit that you can assign users to give them certain functionality. In this particular case, what we're going to do is assign a reviewer role to some employees in our environment. And the purpose for that one is so that they can just view the data and run reports. Okay, so you may have some people in your environment, multiple people that you don't want to give access to the SiteAudit database because they may do something inadvertently or unknowingly that could change the behavior or stop the service from even running. So what we do is we assign them to a reviewer role, and then this prevents them from doing any configuration changes. They can't upgrade the database, start or stop the monitoring service. They can't run queries that might corrupt the database, and they can't even manage or unmanage devices. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. And the process for doing that is first we're going to create a user account. Then we're going to assign that account to give it access to a SiteAudit database and a role. And as I mentioned, the role that we're going to provide is a reviewer role, since this is the most restrictive role. And it will still allow the user to access the data and run reports, but they won't be able to change anything. So let's go ahead and get started with this. And here is my SiteAudit viewer, and I am simulating that I am the administrator. I have full control over this system, and the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to create some users in my environment to give them access to the database. So this is a server I'm connected to and the database, and I'll go to the File, Administration, and log in. Now, if you've logged in here using integrated security, you can just go ahead and log in integrated security. Otherwise, you may have to enter in the credentials to access your server. Okay, so this is my database. The first thing I'm going to do is create a user. Okay, so I'm going to just call this guy user1 and give them a password. Okay, now you can create as many users as you want, as many people as you want to give access to the SiteAudit database. Now in this particular example, I have 4 databases on this SQL server. The database that we're interested in is this first one called 000 SiteAudit. And what I'm going to do is assign this user that I just created, user1, to this database. And how I do that is I go to the security menu, and I can assign any one of these roles. Now this one is the most permissive role, and the user will be able to pretty much do anything as far as configuring, starting and stopping the monitoring. What we want to do is assign them to the reviewer role. That's the most restrictive. So you just hit assign. It's going to ask you to confirm, and now you can see user1 is now a reviewer for this database. Right? It's as simple as that. We're essentially done. Now what we're going to do is install the viewer on the user system, on user1's system, and log them in. Okay, so let's move on to that. Okay, so here I'm on user1's system. I'm going to install the SiteAudit viewer, and we'll just go through this real quick. This can be downloaded from the Netaphor website. Let's see, it's telling me I'm on version 6.600. I'm going to accept the license agreement, and now here's where we select the viewer that we're going to install. Now the viewer comes as an option with any of the other features. By default, the monitoring service, the DCA, is selected by default. We're going to unselect that, and we're going to select only the viewer. Okay, that's pretty much it, and we can go ahead and install. Okay, it's finished. Very quick. It's a very small file and very quick. All right, so now after you install SiteAudit for the very first time and you run it, you will be required to license it. First thing it's going to do is it's going to tell your license is invalid. When you get this message, you're going to either copy this and send it to licensing@netaphor.com. Paste this into the email. Don't take a screenshot of this because this license has to be entered in a utility that will generate your license for you. Alternatively, you may have a key file that you can use to license. I have one on this system, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. And I'm licensed. And now the very first time that you try to access SiteAudit, it's going to take about 30 seconds or so for the viewer to come up, and what it's going to do is tell you that we don't have access to a SiteAudit database, and that's where we're going to enter our information. The information that we're going to enter is we're going to have to enter in the SQL Server. We'll enter the user one that we created's credentials here, and then we'll choose the database. Okay. So let's go back and take a look at this. All right, it's still coming up. There we go. So it says my database is missing or doesn't have the correct schema. We say yes. Point to the server. Use our credentials that we created, user 1. And then we should see we have access to only one database. Now, if you recall, there were 4 databases on that server, but we only gave user 1 access to one of those databases, and so they only have one database that they can access. And let's hit OK. And what we will see here is that by default, let me bring this up a little bit. Here's our viewer. Here we can see all the data. We can go through any of the views and get reports. We can export these in any of these formats. But if you take a look at the setup, we can't really change any of the configuration information. We have the database. Can't do anything in here. Okay. If you recall how we went into here, if I wanted to log in here as user 1, what we'll see is that I pretty much can't create users. I can't create a database. I can't assign users or anything, but I can see that database that that I happen to be a reviewer on. All right. So it's really that simple. This user now has full access to the SiteAudit database. If I go back to my server, here we go. We could see here's all the data, same data here. I can reorganize it from the server. Any of these users can be viewing a different view or something at the same time. Your other user is taking other actions, maybe looking at counters or various things like that. So it's as simple as that to install a viewer in your environment and to give another user access to the SiteAudit database.